Hello everyone, it's me Yannick Peltier reporting once again for PowerPlayChess when Daniel King, your favorite, is having a rest again. It's the Magnus Carlsen Invitational and this event has now moved into the final stage after the qualification phase which lasted for about 2 weeks. Now the semifinals have started today and we have an all-American fight between Fabiano Caruana and Hikaru Nakamura, promising a lot. Fabiano Caruana clearly the better player in classical chess, but Hikaru Nakamura extremely devilish in rapid and blitz, and especially on the internet when he is also a mouse specialist when everything goes so fast. So what will happen in this match? I'm going to take a look at the third game. The format was basically almost the same as in the qualification phase, that is 4 rapid games to start with, and in case of a 2-2, then slight change, not an Armageddon immediately, but first 2 blitz games, and depending on the score, then another tiebreak. Well, but before we speak about Armageddon and whatsoever, of course, the rapid games first, not the classical games, the first 4 rapid games, and we are looking at the third game. The first 2 games in the match ended in draws, and we have Fabiano Caruana with white here against Hikaru Nakamura. They choose actually the same variation as in the first game, so Caruana playing e4, and after e5 going into an Italian game, bishop c4, bishop c5, castle, knight f6, d3, d6, c3, h6. And I remember, well, basically, if you sometimes feel a bit lost in the move orders of this opening, the subtleties of the move orders, then don't worry. I remember Maxime Vachier-Lagrave telling me that even top players do not really grasp every little detail and subtleties of the move orders and of this variation. Of course, it's still a bit in the making because the Italian game is, well, obviously it's a very old opening, but it's become very popular again, let's say in the 3-4 last years. So it's rather fresh. I mean, they have discovered a whole new area of ideas, and basically a new page has opened in the theoretical book of the Italian. So don't worry if you do not grasp every subtleties, and I'm certainly not one who is going to be able to explain them. So we are going to move a little further. A5, the thing we can point out and say about this way of playing with black, it is actually that it's a typical and favorite way of Hikaru Nakamura's here against the Italian. He's had many games recently, most of them on the internet, but not only. He's played like this basically like a dozen of times since last year with good result. He's played matches on chess.com against Wesley So and against I think Dominguez, and there were others. So he's had a lot of experience, and in the first game, just 1 or 2 hours before that, Fabiano Caruana played d4 here, but he didn't achieve anything from the opening. So for here, he tries knight bd2, bishop b6, and bishop b3, which Hikaru Nakamura has some experience with. So he goes bishop e6, and now bishop a4. Well, I guess White's trying to put some pressure on the knight here, trying to get basically d4 at some point. He would like to go d4 if possible. That's the strategical aim of White in this rather slow setup. Knight d7. But of course, giving up the bishop on c6 is a bit premature. It wouldn't yield anything special. So first, White prepares with the knight f1, but there is here a good move, f5. Good move, but also a very logical one, which has been prepared by Black's last move, the retreat of the knight. He goes f5 and tries to open files on the king side. The f file, well, White doesn't really have a choice. I mean, allowing f4 would be a little bit dangerous. So you know, black would be able to start an attack with g5 afterwards. So it's not really what he wants to get. So he opens the center and the king side with a e takes f5, bishop takes f5, and d4 eventually. But now this pawn push in the center is a bit less impressive as it would have been with a pawn on e4, because after takes on d4, knight f6, black's going back to try and control d5, the square in front of the isolated pawn on d4. Just a very natural way of playing, and a very nice square for black to play for, because it's a very central square which can lead to operations on the king side, on the queen side, depending. Imagine black manages to install a knight on d5, and that's exactly what he wants to do with his last move. Then this knight would really dominate. So logically, Caruana will try to prevent that, first with knight g3, bishop h7, and now check on b3, king h8, and a3, well, preventing knight b4, allowing a retreat for the bishop on a2 as well, just in case it gets attacked. But knight e7 follows. Very natural play by Nakamura so far. Can't really say anything. I mean, it's a rapid game, but both players have been really up to the task so far. And this is perhaps the first moment when I think Caruana chose a slightly artificial plan, albeit not bad, but I would have thought that basically the fight for square d5 is lost. Doesn't mean the position is bad, but this fight is lost. So let's try to do something else, and why not attempt to weaken perhaps a little bit the black's castle. Let's not forget that the f-pawn has disappeared for a good purpose. Still, it created a few holes around the king. And bishop c2, trying to put some pressure on the light squares here by exchanging the bishops, would be interesting. So bishop c2, bishop takes, queen takes c2, queen d7 sensible, bishop d2 has to complete development, knight fd5, and something like rook e4, rook f6. To me, this position looks absolutely alright for black, but I don't think that white really has any reason to complain. He can now double rooks on the e-file. He can perhaps also try to first perhaps to play the knight to g4 to protect the pawn on f2, to attack the rook on f6, and well, eventually perhaps he might be able to use those light squares around the black king in the long term. At the moment, you can't really feel any real problem with that, but in the long term, those squares could be weak. So I'd say that both camps have some nice assets to play for in this position, also a few drawbacks, so the position should be about equal. Instead of that, he played bishop e6, c6, bishop d2, knight fd5. Well, and here, perhaps again, a controversial idea by Caruana. Again, the move is not bad, but I'm not convinced about it. To be fair, the computer doesn't condemn it whatsoever, but I don't think a4 was really so natural. On the other hand, I find it a bit hard to suggest a good move. Maybe queen b3, but after a4, where to go? I mean, let's say queen c4, but one has to be wary of some possible sacrifices on f3 here. Nothing concrete yet, but it feels a bit dangerous in a way. And of course, black doesn't have to sacrifice the exchange here. He can simply also reinforce his position slowly but surely. So let's look what happened after a4. Nakamura played knight b4. Well, now he's immediately shows the drawback of a4. That square on b4 has been weakened, and the knight comes here. The knight wants to land here in c2 or d3, so taking here on b4 seems to be natural, and white's next move is also natural, but somehow it keeps drifting more and more to the wrong direction in a way. And I think he should have gone queen d2 here, putting pressure on b4. Apparently the sacrifice on f3 now isn't too dangerous. So knight g6 makes sense to come here to f4, bishop f5. Well, let's say knight h4, takes here, rook e4, hitting the queen, queen f6, and now maybe rook g4 to threaten knight h5 and queen f7. Well, I mean, black obviously is doing well, but white is hanging on in a way. I mean, obviously we don't really feel a good coordination with white pieces, but at least they are somehow menacing. Perhaps this rook and the knight, they could somehow coordinate and play. I like black, but the computer doesn't really agree. It seems to believe that white should be holding all right here. So I'm not going to try and argue with the comp. Well, he's gone queen b3, which seems to be normal, but bishop a5 is good actually. It seems a bit awkward to put the bishop so passively, but he decided to just protect b4, and he certainly already saw how he would be able to reinforce his position, to strengthen his position by organizing his pieces in a quite active way. Rook e3, knight g6. The knight is coming to f4, bishop f5, bishop g8. And in this position, Caruana took his time because he obviously hesitated whether to go bishop e6 when black can obviously repeat moves with bishop h7 if he wishes to do so. But white would be well advised to repeat moves. So probably there's something which did not really appeal to Caruana after bishop e6. But I can't really understand what, because this exchange of light squared bishops is a bit as before, as when we explained that the black king would be slightly weaker without the bishops, and here this impression remains. So generally speaking, the exchange of these bishops is favorable to white. Not especially that he can claim an advantage, but at least he can hope to have some sort of chances against the black king in the long run. The position would more or less be equal here, balanced. But Caruana decided to play queen c2 after a good thought for more than 1.5 minutes out of 15 minutes in the game, so it's pretty serious thought. But I'm afraid he assessed the position pretty badly, because black manages to organize an attack now with knight h4. You have to take it, queen takes h4, and there is a problem with this pawn on d4. Not just a problem with the f-file and generally some high activity by black's pieces, but this pawn on d4, that's actually the main problem. And Caruana decided to hang on to it, but perhaps he should have tried bishop e6 instead. And after takes, queen takes d4, knight f5. Well, here there is the strong move b3, probably the best move. Otherwise, black would have to give up that pawn on d6, and so b3. And now we can exchange queens here. Knight takes c2, and after d5, black has a pleasant advantage, a pleasant initiative. He has a bishop against the knight in such an open position, with pawns on both sides, I mean action on both sides. This is certainly an advantage. The bishop is combined with rooks, so usually rook and bishop is a better duo than rook and knight. So black's advantage is quite serious in an endgame, but after all, it's an endgame, and white can have chances to hold here. Whereas after queen d3, they followed bishop b6, and now there are problems everywhere. First of all, if you protect the pawn, then a4 is hanging. So he tried rook e4, but after queen f6, there are other problems coming now. That bishop here is a bit misplaced, and there is a big problem on the f file against f2. So actually, white is more or less losing here already. Rook g4 to prevent g6, but rook a5 is coming. So now suddenly this rook is activating from the a file to the side along the 5th rank. The bishop is attacked, and well, he found nothing better but to go bishop g6. And here actually a clever idea by Nakamura. He did not just rush to take the pawn on f2, after which it might be, well, maybe not completely unclear, but you know, white has suddenly some threats like rook f1, and you have to count as well with knight h5 and problems perhaps against g7. Well, instead of this, he just played bishop e6 against the rook, not taking the pawn. He's playing against the rook, which doesn't have good squares, actually. You can't go to e4 because of the bishop. So he tried knight e4, but this costs the pawn on d4. And after the exchange of queens, now everything is falling apart. It's not just that it's pawn down, but everything is hanging. The pawn is hanging, the rook is hanging, and white's pieces are suddenly completely discoordinated. He tried rook d1, when black could have taken the rook on g4 and hindered, but what he played was actually even stronger. He just snatched that pawn on b2, claiming 2 extra pawns and a better position. The game is basically over, and after a few moves, which we're going to play through, Nakamura decided the game. g3, he took a 3rd pawn here, f4, rook a1, rook d3 takes, bishop c3, knight takes d6, rook f6, taking a piece. It's either the knight or the bishop hanging on d6 and g6. Therefore, Caruana resigned. Caruana is known for his resilience, for his great mental strength, and in the 4th and last game, being led 2-1 and having the black pieces, he managed to fight back, to win the game, and to reach a 2-2 in that match. Thus, according to the regulations, both players had to play a blitz match, which Nakamura eventually decided in his favor by winning the first game with black, actually in the same opening as this game. And then in the second blitz game, he also managed to win after a difficult fight, but he managed to prevail with white. So he won the blitz match, the tiebreak blitz match 2-0, and thus qualifies for the final, which will take place on Sunday, May 3rd, and his opponent will be determined on Saturday in the other semi-final between Ding Liren and the world champion Magnus Carlsen. Well, that was a game where black managed actually to show his good comprehension, his good understanding of this opening. I think the game was pretty much decided in the fight for the center, which white did not really manage to understand and to play at the same level as black. He didn't understand a few things like exchanging the light square bishops, and basically black's domination on the center eventually led to his victory. Well, I thank you for your attention, and I hope you liked this video. So give a thumb to Danny and his PowerPlayChess channel. Thank you very much, and I'll see you certainly another time.